Hello, and welcome to this edition of Finance and Technology Insights with Eric Buhrendorf. I am Brian Williams from Northshire Consulting. He's from EVERNET. What's happening, Eric?
What's going on? I'm coming to you live from an overpriced Apple laptop, a standing desk. So how do I look?
You look pretty good. You look pretty good. You
Everything
were so overpriced. What's that all about?
I mean, I don't know. You know, like
Fun.
us guys in IT, we always kind of poo-poo the Mac as an overpriced premium device. I mean, it is nice. It is really nice, actually. So you know, I'm just having fun with you, I guess.
So you just so how old is it? How long have you had it?
You know, I always say that like I'm like the shoe cobbler's kid going to school barefoot. So my computers are always like easily 5+ years old. In fact, I would say I would say closer to 10 years old, the computers that I use. Because so many of my tools are web-based. I only need a good internet connection and a secure computer to connect from. So yeah, I think my computer downstairs in the office is I think like 12 years old.
Okay.
And I haven't had, I mean, all my laptops were like you know, our clients are always going through new equipment. So, you know, they're happy to let us dispose of them. So, you know, we just always take old equipment, scrub it clean. And then, you know, and that's how it's been for the last probably 10, 12 years. And so my laptop, I have laptops floating all over the house, and they're all, like I said, 5 years old or more. And the only problem with that is like laptops can be pretty slow. So the previous laptop I had was an old MacBook, but I think that was like 8 years old or 10 years old, and could barely use the web reliably. So I wouldn't dare think of, yeah. So, I mean, and the tool that we're using is in the web to host our webinar, our recording here. So,
Yeah, I haven't looked into what kind of specs they recommend for this, but obviously we're doing okay. My desktop is about maybe a year and a half old. Only once you get into like the video stuff, you need a little bit more RAM. But like you said, most of my stuff is web-based anyway, with external storage and OneDrive and all that kind of stuff. But it's funny. My portable laptop that I use, my Surface, is pretty old, and I really only use it. Like sometimes I'll actually have clients use it. You know, I'll be working with a participant and I'll flip it across the table or something, and it's like almost a little embarrassing, but it still works. And it's like, ugh. But it's probably due for an upgrade.
Does it have like a Voltron sticker on it from Luke or something?
Yeah. It's got like well, I'm not going to put a political sticker out there, but it's like funny when you see all the old cars and they have like a, you know, Bush Cheney sticker on them or something.
Yeah, right. That's funny. Bush Cheney. What else? Oh yeah, and I have a standing desk here in this is our front living room, I guess, and I like it over here because I have windows and natural light, and trying to spend more time on my feet rather than sitting. You know what I mean? Do you have a standing desk?
I don't. Nope.
Ever contemplate one of those?
I do have the setup. My wife has this thing in her office that just kind of sits on top of a desk, which I can finagle to make it work like a standing desk. But I'm trying to be just better about setting the egg timer for 20 minutes, you know, just setting the phone to go off.
And you're a runner, so you certainly have your time. You get plenty of time on your feet.
Yeah, not as much as I don't even know if I'd call myself a runner anymore.
I was trying to be generous there.
And then this time of year, it's a little bit more after hours than in the morning. I did get a good walk in this morning because I had to finish up Lex, but it was luckily it wasn't raining too hard. But
so what's going on?
That was funny. I sent you that on Sunday. I sent you the Lex thing, and you were like already watching it. You were already like 20 minutes in or something.
Yeah, I think you and I we're aligned in probably much of our media. Well, I think we have our overlapping circles anyways. So Lex Friedman, you're talking about. What was the Sam Altman he had on, right?
Yep.
So Sam Altman is the CEO of OpenAI, and of course, they're making they're completely dominating the at least technical. Would you say they're I mean, definitely the technical news cycle, news space, they're dominating. I mean, they're definitely making it into the mainstream, right? I mean,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
business news.
Yeah, I'd say when they launched the chat, that got a lot of play because that had the first sort of real world applications that people had an interface that people were likely to likely to use, and then they quickly went to 3.5, and now they're on to 4. And then last week they highlighted some of the apps that are going to be coming in there, so it's really going to be its kind of own ecosystem or operating system almost.
Operating system. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm really excited about that. Let's break this down a little bit. So
Hmm.
I watched Bill Gates do an interview with Microsoft CTO also, and they spend a lot of time talking about OpenAI because Microsoft's a huge investor.
Hmm.
I don't know if people know this or not, but Elon Musk was an early investor or um, component to OpenAI. I think he divested or exited. I don't know what the circumstances are surrounding Elon's exit from OpenAI. I
Yeah.
know that he doesn't have some nice things to say about it, OpenAI and or Sam Altman. I don't know if he targets him specifically or not. Yeah, so OpenAI. So the versions you mentioned, they're on version 4, but they finished that in August.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they said they finished. Sam Altman said they finished that in August, and so that just like leaves you wondering, like, what the hell? What are they on now?
Hmm. Right, and they alluded to that a little bit in this podcast. So if you're not familiar with Lex, Lex Friedman, they tend to go between two. I don't know. I think I've seen almost 4 hours on some of this stuff, but so it's a podcast, and then it's a video version, which is him normally in an all black suit with a white shirt. And looks like Eric's pulling it up here. And then unless he's traveling, it's all black curtains around what he's trying to do. So we talk about it a lot as far as like production value and stuff, and how funny it is that there's not a whole lot going on there. So he has his website there, and then that links to up on top where it says podcast.
Yeah,
It'll show you the thumbnails and
yeah. So this was this last week's episode. So to your point, this is a 2 hour and 23 minutes, but boy, he's had some long ones. I think he's had people on there like you said, as long as 4 hours.
mhm.
Um, he does get a little bit ideological. I don't know what's between philosophical, political, and ideological, because he definitely has a kind of a disposition, right?
Yeah, he definitely does. He's definitely a deep thinker on this stuff. So he's a single guy. He's no children, and so he's got a lot of time on his hands
He's
to
a
really kind of
scientist or a
focus on this stuff.
technologist,
Hmm.
anyways.
Yep.
He talks about I don't know if he went to MIT, but I think he's gone to some higher learning institutions. So yeah, he does some pretty good interviews. It's so funny because I watch
Yeah.
this stuff right
You want to
in our
skip
living.
out of that screenshot.
Huh?
You want to skip out of that screenshot with the text,
um,
but we can
so
talk about that too. Yeah.
I watch this stuff right in my living room, right? My kids are walking by.
Mhm.
My wife's doing some craft or some work or something with me. She's my wingman, and my dad, who lives with us, he'll like breeze through the living room, and he can't sit for 60 seconds with this on in the living room. It's a total nosebleed. Would you say?
I would say so. Yeah. I've found for this particular podcast and some of the longer form ones, I have to be out for a walk. I can maybe, if I'm doing something in the house, maybe putting dishes away or doing laundry or something like that, but there's nothing to sit and watch. He's doing a
Yeah,
video portion of it just because he can, but there's
it's certainly
it
not
doesn't want
visually
to.
stimulating.
No, definitely not.
It's
Definitely
funny.
not. Um,
So, anyways, ChatGPT. So, OpenAI. There's 6 years. I think 2016 or so. They were founded. They've been working on what they call large language models, where it's the technology they use to describe their artificial intelligence. I don't know how much background. What I'm doing is I'm trying to lay the foundation for the
Right.
plugins that you just
Sure.
described, because I think it's so big. It's like such a big thing. I mean, do you remember when the iPhone came out? People forget that the App Store came years later. I don't know
Right.
how exactly long, but the iPhone did not launch with the App Store.
Right.
So
Right.
the
They wanted.
functionality that you got from the iPhone was what was baked into it, you know?
Hmm.
So you just mentioned that they last week announced a plugin, or essentially like an app. I don't know where it would be, but basically a plugin store, right?
Sure.
And if you apply that context of the App Store to the iPhone, wouldn't you say that the iPhone, the utility of the iPhone just immeasurably exploded, right? I mean, we've talked about this. I can open every door in my house, turn on every light in my house,
Hmm.
um, check bank statements, communicate, blah blah blah. So yeah, to create an ecosystem of apps that plug into artificial intelligence. What do you think?
I think it's obviously going to be pretty significant because a lot of folks use things like Zaps, and they'll use Zapier to get stuff done, and they'll have to go from application to application. But if you can do that all within the chat window, so the example that they gave was somebody was traveling to San Francisco for the weekend, and they said, give me a recipe to make a vegan soup at home on Sunday, but Saturday night I want to go out to eat. So book me a table at a restaurant the night before. So it pulled in Open Table, it pulled in Instacart, and it gave the recipe, added all the items to the Instacart. So you could check out there. It suggested a restaurant and said, do you want to book this um, through Open Table? So the ability to do all that, right? Because it's all about having captive eyes and not leaving the program, not leaving the system, right? That's what Google's tried to do through their search. It's to give people the answers that they want without going to that next level. So I think it's going to be it's moving fast. I think that's the part that's exciting and terrifying at the same time, because and we talk about normals and how much they're talking about this. So I asked my sister about my 14-year-old nephew. I'm like, is he into this? Are people at schools talking about it? And she's like, no, not really. And then I asked my wife, who's a high school teacher. I'm like, are the teachers talking about this? Is this like a big deal? Like, how do we embrace this? How do we protect ourselves? And how do we check for plagiarism and all that kind of stuff? And it feels like it's not quite there yet as far as the mainstream, although we've seen it on like Good Morning America. We've seen it on 60 Minutes as the CEO makes his rounds here. But it's moving so fast that if you're a couple steps behind, it might be a little bit difficult to catch up, although maybe not. If you came into iPhone 4 or 5, it's not like you were left behind. It's almost maybe a little bit easier.
How many grandmothers and grandfathers, and even my parents' generation, so my dad, like, how long did it take them to get a touchscreen smartphone?
Mhm.
Definitely they were the last ones to get it, but you know the usefulness of technology really does have to hit the mainstream in order for it to become ubiquitous and mass market adoption, I guess.
Mhm.
Technologies are definitely leveraged by there are thought leaders out there that are doing things with technology. You're like, oh my God. And, it's like that SEO, marketing for like website development. A lot of that is like, there's technologies out there that like normals just don't know about, and the techniques and things. So I imagine AI will be a tool that can be wielded in wild and crazy ways to benefit good actors and bad actors and commerce. And I just that's for sure. And then when it comes to the mainstream, like I, for one, I mean, like I've got a smart speaker in every single room of our house, with the exception of the first floor bathroom, and that's it, I
Mhm.
think. Um, and it's basically an egg timer. I mean, that's the joke about it. It's like, what's the weather? Start a timer. Yeah, I can
Give me a
read. Like
stock
I have,
quote.
huh?
Give me a stock quote. Give me a recipe.
Yeah, give me a dad joke. Some things like that. I remember like when Uber, I'm not going to say her name. It's the Amazon Echo. Uber. I remember when Uber came out, because they're an app ecosystem too. You know what I mean? So you
Mhm.
can have plugins and apps. And I remember when Uber launched theirs, and like the novelty of, you could just talk to the speaker and say, "Hey, book me a car to somewhere," using Uber. It works. We don't do it because the problem with the smart speaker is it's natural language, but it's not natural interaction, right? So I'm using my language, but there's too much that I have to. There's too much syntax I have to remember.
Mhm.
I know what
Right.
syntax is, but
Sure.
like I have to remember the exact words and names of, like, I give a name to every light bulb in the house, every smart blind, every, you know what I
Mhm.
mean? And it's like, I don't remember all the names of my kids, you know what I mean? Like, in that context, it's funny. But so the big thing with OpenAI is it just feels like it's the like the brain has arrived for the computer, like it's the natural speech, and understanding of context and things. So long story short, I cannot wait to see, like, so people, the normals don't really know about it yet, but what the way that they're probably going to see it is when Amazon plugs it in, like plugs in the API to the
Mhm.
smart speaker, and then like overnight you could just start having a conversation with the speaker.
Right. And we'll see what happens, whether they are developing their own or if they sort of tap into this, because now we've seen Bard, we've seen Bing use their version, which is, part of the open AI, is they own so much of it. So that's the part that could be scary, at least, because you think
Yeah, will
about,
there be a monopoly, or will there be a market for AI, right?
yeah, will it be a marketplace where you think about, news? Are you going to have two different viewpoints of, there was a criticism they talked about in here where Elon said OpenAI was a little too woke, so you may have, are you tapping into something that's already aligned with, it's going to agree with you, so you're going to be more comfortable talking to it. So you may have news outlets are going to tap into maybe the same API, but they might construct it in a way that's going to be more friendly to their audience. So that's
Hmm.
one
Yeah,
potential
that's interesting. I
downfall.
wonder how AI will adapt to, I mean, I don't know who I'm going to offend by saying this, but there's clear geographic or regional differences in ideologies, philosophies, politics is kind of what I was getting to earlier. Um, Accents. I mean, like you go to the South, you go out West, whatever. Um, I wonder how AI will adapt to that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think the AI, I think it'll be okay with accents. I mean, they're doing a pretty good job of the voice cloning and the deep fake. So when you pull that into, it might be something like when you get your speaker, it's going to say, "Hey, we need to learn you a little bit. Read this one pager that has a lot of the different pronunciations and certain things like that." I think it'll be okay with that.
But in terms of like in its representation back to you, like
Mm,
if you read the first paragraph or have a conversation with it, and you have a Creole accent, do you think
yeah.
the AI will speak to you in Creole, or with a
Mhm.
Creole accent, or that Louisiana Bayou accent, or
Right.
the Southern Baptist accent, or um, will it start saying y'all? You know what I mean? Will it?
Yeah. Is there a marketplace for that, right? I mean, you turn on the national news, everybody speaks a certain way. There's I think they said that a lot of news people type come from like the Ohio area, because they found that that's the accent or the dialect that seems to, they don't want New York, Boston. They don't want anything coastal. They don't want anything too Midwest, and that's where they pull a lot of people from. So I don't know if I'd necessarily want to have it talk back to me in a certain language or not. Although people might be more comfortable with that, or they might be more trusting of the responses if it sounds like them, right?
I feel like I can see the economic and incentive for the AI arbiter to do that, because if people want to feel, um, they want to feel, if people want to feel connected to their AI, well, let's put it this way: I wouldn't want my smart speaker talking to me in a Creole accent, right? So, um, but somebody with a Creole accent, it's got to feel like a fish out of water when they come up to the Northeast, right? I mean, so
Yeah. And we might be looking at it a little too simplistic. If you think of like GPS might be the good example, right? You can have a few different voices there now, but once you've got so many voices in an AI model and everything synthesized and it's pulled in every piece of video and audio ever created, you can have your speakers speak back to you like Snoop Dogg or
right,
Martha
but
Stewart or whatever those kind of things are. So
do you think it'll happen? Do you think it'll happen automatically, or do you think you have to prompt it? Will it come?
yeah, I
Will it
think you
come out
you
of the box
prompt
with
it.
the Ohio accent, and you have to be like, "Hey, I relate more to Snoop Dogg than Al Roker. Can you,
Mhm.
And then AI is like, "Don't worry, brother,
Yeah.
I got you."
Yeah, I think that'll be relatively easy to do. I don't
But
think that's I mean, people might change it day to day. People might
yeah,
change it,
yeah.
it's March, speak to me in
Talk to
a
me
in
like
an
Martha
Irish
Stewart,
accent
not
or
Snoop
something
Dogg
like that.
today.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what's fascinating is the interface will be. That's what's fascinating about it, and that's when it will really be like, it'll be world changing. Is you will be talking to it like that. In fact, when you go to the website and you are talking to it in the text form factor,
Mhm.
that's how you are speaking to it. It's natural speak. You speak to it like a human.
Right.
Um, so kind of full circle. Like I'm chomping at the bit. Like I cannot wait for that headline. And mark my words, the headline is Amazon licenses OpenAI. I mean, at least if until they develop their own or copy it, right? I
Mhm.
mean, and whether there's a marketplace for it or not, will it be the Windows or the Google of? Will OpenAI be the Windows or Google of the large language model, or is the technology, or did they just unlock what a methodology was and then anybody can do it? So I mean, there's a lot of companies that are working on AI. Like you said, Bard is Google's version. Amazon certainly is working on something. Will they license OpenAI until they build their own model, or who knows? But I cannot wait for that headline that says, coming in 2 weeks, an update to every Amazon speaker
Mhm.
in your house will tap OpenAI. Maybe there's a setting where you can just, okay, this is too much for me. Like you could turn them off. But the day that I can just start having a natural speech conversation with the speaker and have it interpret and infer what I want, right? So years ago they came out with like rooms, so you could basically say like, this is the living room and all of the smart devices you put in that room. And so like if you have a smart blind, or if you have a smart light bulb, or a smart switch, you could you so for you, when they came out with that, you could say, while you're in the room, if the living room echo speaker was the one that heard your prompt, you could just say, turn on the lights. So even though each light has its own unique name, um, they said, okay, well, you're in this room. This is the speaker that heard you. So we will interpret the as these lights,
Mhm.
you know? And with OpenAI, if it could just kind of eliminate that pre-configuration and have that kind of awareness of what room and location, and that's what I'm really looking. That's what really excites me, is that kind of natural speech thing.
Yeah, I think probably the existing technology is pretty good at the task stuff inside the house, or I think the big advantage of the open AI will be linking together different things that you do online, or something that you would do outside of that ecosystem. And I don't think that's very far away at all anyway. I mean, I'm sure you can get an open AI API and you can tap into that. That's actually a little bit behind the chat though, because it uses OpenAI 3. I've tested that, and some of the responses aren't as good as I get through the chat. But I mean, you can pull that API into pretty much anything. So I'm sure it's not directly built into Amazon yet, but you could get your phone to do responses and then route your phone through the speaker, I'm sure, somehow.
Yeah, I
Somebody's
mean,
doing
I
that
saw
already.
some people working on it, but I don't want to. I don't want to like spend any time hacking and
Right.
patching and jiggering. I just want
Mhm.
this stuff to just be. Oh, that's what I'm not conveying this well, but I feel like that's the thing that OpenAI is doing with ChatGPT is like it's just silking the sheet. It's like it just feels silky, like where technology is always like, oh, I didn't configure that right. I wanted it to do the thing, but I misconfigured it.
Right, right.
Like I want to turn on that light sitting right next to me, but I can't remember the name of it. Or
Mhm.
she's thinking that I'm saying like robot rather than vacuum or something. Like she's like, and there's like a inflection, thing,
Yeah.
and ChatGPT feels like those edges are just getting like smoothed out.
Mhm.
I don't
Right.
know how.
Right, because right now it's not, it can learn us when you're in that single chat, but if you log in today and start a new chat tomorrow, it's not pulling in everything it's learned from you. So I think that'll be the next step, is it's going to be a little bit more personalized to who you are, so it learns those type of things.
The other thing you've heard of, we've talked about Dolly, right? Dolly
Mhm.
is the AI image creator. So you can describe, make me a picture in the style of Rembrandt of an elephant riding a bicycle. And it will give you versions of that. I've never even played with that, but I've seen a lot of examples of it online. Um, and I'm wondering in similar fashion where like I believe OpenAI overnight is going to make these smart speakers 1,000% more useful to my life. I
Mhm.
see. I watch way too many videos of Tesla full self driving beta testers on YouTube. Show the new version of the software every time a new version comes out. They test it, and I find myself not watching to the end anymore. I just watch until the first error that the vehicle makes, and then I kind of move on. I'm like, okay, they're not making leaps and bounds anymore. Like it doesn't take much for a car manufacturer to put in the hardware necessary, like cameras and like linkages to the steering wheel and like the logic to the braking. So it's like, okay, it's really not hard. It's actually pretty trivial now for car manufacturers to make a car steer by software and accelerate and stop and maintain distances from physical objects, right? So that hardware suite is really kind of pedestrian. It's kind of trivial today. So it's really a software problem. And this is what I've been saying for years whenever I talk to somebody about it. The self-driving technology in cars is no longer a hardware problem, it's a software problem.
Mhm.
And OpenAI feels like it's the software that, again, if Tesla and Elon's ego would never say like, oh, we're going to license OpenAI because it can overnight activates and solves what we're trying to achieve with the self-driving technology. But it feels like it is the technology that is going to do that. It feels like they're toiling over like if then commands in their code to say like, oh, if this happens, like do this on that time. And like, how do you code every edge case and every scenario that exists on a road? Where open AI seems like, and it uses it literally, the words that it spits out, it's using a probability. It's because you use this word and this word and this word in this order in your input, we know that the probable output are these words, you
Mhm.
know. So it just seems like that OpenAI is the solution to like self-driving, where it's like you just give it enough data and it's like, oh, okay, well, the probability, the trajectory that we should take this unprotected left turn is this probably, you know what I mean?
Right, right, and the learning of people's habits and what they like to do if they, somebody who likes to stay in the middle lane or somebody who likes to do a certain preference or whatever, and also the ability to not just get real time data, but to interpret it and combine that with the historical data, which will be that should be pretty significant.
And Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, he said like I think he said we were surprised because I think Lex said, well, how much data do you need to train an effective model in the OpenAI? And he said we were surprised at how little we actually did need.
Mm.
So fascinating stuff for sure.
Right, and how much could that be? How much could that be gamed? And I don't know if you want to get into some of the positives and
Okay, well,
pitfalls of it,
let's
but
let's talk about positive. Okay, you got one. Go ahead.
well, so we were talking about they mentioned on the podcast a couple different scenarios where one was Lex mentioned putting in the prompt, kill as many people as you could possibly kill with a dollar. Another one was a little bit more creative. So there's been some hackers who have instructed it to do certain things that it's not supposed to do. So one was, write me a tweet that's hateful of a particular group, but not so bad that it would be flagged by Twitter and be removed. So that was a little bit more of an advanced prompt, which it did respond to and answer. So the question is what kind of limitations need to be put on it, if any? Do you want it to answer every potential question? And if the answer is no, who is the group that's going to be in charge of that? Because, in a perfect world, there's cut and dry differences between right and wrong, but obviously we know that that's not the way things work. So who's ultimately going to be in charge of that, which is a bit of a scary notion. So what are your thoughts on that?
So let me back up and say, have you used OpenAI for any practical or business uses yet?
Yes.
Do you have any, are you able to share any what that was?
Oh, yeah, I've just had to write like a particular like blog topic, like give me an outline, give me some more information on this. I've had to rewrite a couple things that, sometimes you want it to write it in your style. Sometimes you want it to write something completely different. So I had a situation where a prospect had gone like 90% of the way to set up their 401k and kind of ghosted me. So I'd sent a couple emails and then I was like, you know what, just rewrite this in a completely different tone. I wanted it to be a tone that was, forget the word I used offhand, but not like, hey, where the heck are you? It was just kind of like, hope everything's
Gentle.
okay. Let me
Right.
know when you're ready type of thing. And it did a good job with that. So those have been two, I guess, of the primary use cases.
So,
I actually had it last night. I had to write a joke and a poem based on one of my son's stuffed animals, and we did that. And then we were having some
I
fun with it.
remember.
We said write it in the particular tone of Jerry Seinfeld, write it in the tone of whatever, and did a pretty good job with that.
Awesome. So my marketing team has been using it since day one for all the reasons you just said: creative writing, ideas, acting as a muse for creative ideas, things like that. So the creative is really cool. It totally solves writer's block. I mean, it is writer's block. I mean, overnight it has solved writer's block. So that's amazing unto itself. I don't spend, despite all of the video activities and things that I do, I'm really not spending a lot of time doing creative writing for myself. So the team's doing that. So my day-to-day stuff is business administration and decision making. And last week it came across my table that we needed to draft a subcontractor agreement. And I opened up Word and I had a blank sheet of paper staring at me and I started writing, and then the light bulb went off. I go, wait a minute. I mean, I've written subcontractor agreements 100 times over the last 20 years, and they're all the same. And I could have even maybe pulled it from another one or something and started there. But I said, wait a minute, let me just go to ChatGPT and I said, draft me a short form subcontractor agreement for a professional services company hiring a whatever, and it just did it. It just, and it formatted it in a way that was like, the legal formatting, if you will. You know what I mean? It looked like an agreement, even down to the signature line. It actually created the signature lines for the executing parties,
That's pretty
with
cool.
a date line. And what did I do? Like, I didn't just copy and paste it and my work was done. I read it. I saw that some of my goals were not met in it, so I had to add. There was like a data clause. I said, okay, we need, add a data retention clause and confidentiality clause. It did have confidentiality, but it was kind of broad, so I had to tighten that up. And then I proofread it, and I even had my wife look at it, and I said, "Is anything missing from this subcontract agreement?" She didn't know that I used AI to draft it, and she's an attorney and she does this all day,
Right.
and she's like, no, it looks pretty complete. And in fact, I think she may have even pointed out that the confidentiality clause was not specific enough for data retention.
Hmm.
And so I was like, okay, great. And it took me, it took me like 10 minutes. It was 20 minutes tops, you know what I mean? And that's, I can't, did I put an attorney out of work? I could probably have produced a thing myself. I could have, if I were a bigger corporation, I would have definitely delegated that to an attorney.
Mhm.
I could have had an attorney review, I could have paid an attorney to review it, so is that a benefit? Is that to the detriment of the community? What do you think?
To that, I would say no. Um, so we talk about the jobs that it could potentially cost, and I think you and I are in agreement on that. That there's no question that there will be some jobs that are every new technology, but the ability to overall the quality of life and the ability to do jobs better. One of the things they talked about in the podcast is we need to figure out how important work is to us. Even people that dislike their jobs, that's still, when somebody says, "What do you do?" we don't normally lead with, "Well, I do a bunch of yard work on the weekend," or "I play with my son," or "I do this," or "I do that." We lead with our occupation. That's what we do. That's how we answer that question. So people still have a lot of pride in what they do, and nobody likes to see their job come under attack or say that a robot could do that better, or for
I mean, certainly if I lost my job to AI and I was not clever enough or resourced enough to find another use for myself in society that could feed me, that is scary. I don't take that away from anybody. I
Mhm.
truly, truly do not take that away from anybody. That has got to be frightening. I mean, you're a coal miner or a factory worker, and the mine closes, the factory closes, or goes under, or relocates, or offshores. I mean, yeah, completely sensitive to that for sure.
Sure.
Um, I would not have society. I would not strangle. I would not choose to strangle the progress of society. Um, for my fears in that context.
Mhm.
It's just not. I don't. And I think our society should hold people like that who would do that accountable in an aggressive way. The whole the whole ship should take on water because I'm afraid or something. I don't know what the analogy is. It's
Mhm.
um, instead, and I think this is what's going to happen. What has happened, society, the benefits and capital society will gain from the efficiencies of these technologies that displace people. There will be funds and resources allocated for retraining, rehoming, certainly feeding and caring for people displaced by technologies. I mean, that's what we're doing now, right?
Mhm. Right, and you combine that with longevity and population growth, all that sort of stuff, because there's definitely a problem that needs to be solved, and I think can be solved. They went right into the idea of this will help eliminate poverty or come closer to doing that. They didn't get into the specifics of what their thoughts were on
Poverty is
that.
weird because poverty, and I'm not a scientist in this regard, so I'm going to be
Mhm.
speaking out of my ass here. But my understanding of poverty is it's subjective. It's by
Right.
somebody's measure. It's either by
Mhm.
the community at large's measure, or a group of legislators measure. But my understanding is it's pretty hard to go hungry in this country. Not to say
Right.
people are not going hungry, but in the Western world, my understanding is it's really difficult to go hungry.
Mhm.
Um, I mean, take that for what you will. So, 100 years ago, 200 years ago, I think it was a lot easier to starve to death.
Yeah. Right, and that's definitely a relative number, right? Every country has their own quote poverty line where if you live under this, but somebody who's
Poverty line, right?
somebody who's at the poverty line in this country lives like a king did, you know, 200 years ago
And
or
again, if that offends anybody, I sincerely apologize. It's not meant to offend, but I agree with you, Brian. Like
yeah.
it's um, the living wage argument, like what's a living wage, and the dignity and stuff, of people, and that sort of thing. But like we all were born under the stars, and our species was born under the stars, naked and cold and wet.
Right.
So yes, we can build roofs, yes, we can build resistive heaters and electricity to keep us warm, and all of those technologies. But all of those things come from the thoughts and minds and efforts of men and women. So it's like they're not entitled. You have to take from people to give to others, you know what I mean? So, and then we're going down that philosophical line, and again, I don't mean to.
Yeah, you can get into some pretty deep discussions quickly. I don't know if it was Lex or another podcast, but just the idea of the percentage of humans in history that have taken a hot shower. It's like 0.00000, like out to, seven
That's
or
a
eight
really good
digits
point.
one, right? Because it's a relatively new phenomenon. I mean, even in the last, I don't know, would you say 70 years or
70
something,
years, one
or even
lifetime.
50? Yeah, that it's, and
Those in
many
poverty
people
are
have.
many in poverty are probably taking hot showers. That's the
Mhm.
point, right?
Yeah, or have a facility where they could do that, or yeah,
Right.
you're 100% right. So, I think the other interesting part here is the line of happiness. I think they say, even now the happiness line, like people are at their peak happiness around like 250 to 300,000 or something. Like anything
Mhm.
beyond that is more money, more problems type of thing, or you just the incremental shifts aren't there, right? I think
I
we've
don't know. I
talked about
keep
that.
reading articles that like people at 300,000 a year are living paycheck to paycheck. So
Well, that too, yeah, yeah. I think
anybody
it'd
at
still be
any
very
level.
happy doing that though.
I don't know.
They
I don't think anything's fun about living paycheck to paycheck. Been there.
yeah, yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
if
even if you're a millionaire at paycheck to paycheck, I mean, the car is nicer you're riding in. Maybe the house is
mhm,
bigger that you're worried about losing, that you're sleeping
mhm.
in. Um, I don't know. I mean, we're shooting at a lot of walls here.
Yeah, we are.
Um,
Yeah, but I think
but
it all relates back to the AI and the
yeah, so coming
technology
back to AI, right?
discussion.
So like a lot of doctors and lawyers, will they lose their jobs? I don't know. I think a lot of doctors and lawyers who refuse or won't or can't use AI will probably lose their jobs.
Mhm.
But I do view AI and technology at large as a human amplifier,
Sure.
not a human displacer. When the shell, I always go back to this boiling the economy can always be boiled down to a lemonade stand or a hole digging company. You have a company that sells holes, and when that technology of hole digging and the company first formed, when the first market of holes came out, the first hole was dug by hand. Like you're like scraping with your, and you dig one hole a week, and and then like you hire your first few employees, and everybody's digging the hole by hand, and then somebody doesn't eat for a few nights and doesn't work for a few nights because they contemplate there's got to be an easier way to dig holes, right? So then they invent the shovel, and now you can dig 5 hole a day, and with half the people. So did some of the hole diggers lose their job? I'm sure they lost their job. Many of them were reapplied to dig more holes for more people
Right.
for cheaper.
Hmm.
You know what I
Right.
mean? So,
Exactly.
and
And
the
I
shovel is technology, and it's just a representation of
sure.
technology. Sorry, you're go ahead.
Yeah, and I think the environment we live in right now, nobody is. It's weird because we're looking at potentially long term an oversupply of workers, but everything we're looking at now is an undersupply of workers. Like
Well,
we're
that's
not.
right. That's the thing. Like the news cycle can't have it both ways. The politicians can't have it both ways. They're simultaneously saying there's a shortage of workers, and then they're
Mhm.
simultaneously saying that AI is going to steal our jobs, steal the jobs.
Right.
Sorry,
Right.
you
There's certain jobs that will, but and they brought up the example of um, coders and programmers. None of them are looking. Well, some of them are looking at this and saying, "Well, this is going to put me out of business because somebody's gonna be able to do this and take my job or AI." But the really good programmers are saying, "I can program 10 times as much. I can be that much more efficient. I've got a notebook full of ideas that I've never been able to tackle because it's taken me too long."
I
So.
and I would argue that it's not even the really good coders will survive and succeed. I I just read an article that like a large percentage of Googlers are do nothing employees. Like they're like Google
Oh,
just
sure. Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that or not, but
Mhm.
like apparently a large percentage of employees at Google are, are just they're just uh, warm bodies, and because in the Silicon Valley, it's all about like how much talent you can have access to when something happens, you need to move resource. You know what I mean? So like a lot of people, and I don't know. I'm just reading from the article. I wish I could cite the article, but um, so it's not even, I don't even think the really good programmers, it's just the programmers who are working. It's
Mhm.
the people who are doing the thing, you know?
Who will be able to do the thing faster. And I saw a similar story at Facebook, and this was not even on the technical side, it was a recruiter side where a recruiter was hired there to, recruit people for the job. And she started talking to her people on her level and said, "Oh, well, how many people have you hired in the last couple of years?" They're like, nobody. We have our system, but if they need somebody to be hired, we're there for that. But in the meantime, we don't really do anything. So a lot of that stuff will be sort of cleared out anyway.
Yeah.
I think it sort of accelerates the time frame of people being cut off from jobs. It just sort of moves the line forward.
Yeah, and disruption is a phenomenon that occurs with new technology. There will be temporary displacements. There will be temporary pain. It's just a matter of like how much will the politicians hurt hurt us as a people while responding to these newsworthy sound bites and headlines about fairness and equity. And if you take a magnifying glass and zero in on one person's pain, is that indicative or representative of the whole? Is that or the trajectory? And unfortunately, that's what politicians do in order to sell power for themselves. So I don't know. I mean, as a technologist, my position is obvious. Like AI will kill people. It will hurt people. It will take from people. But as in all technologies, I think it will. It
Mhm.
will overall benefit society. It will amplify human output. It will make our lives better. I mean, as it is right now, and I know we're rounding an hour, but my wife and my father, they go shopping for something to do.
Mhm.
I hate shopping. I don't want to shop. I have Amazon coming here every day. It seems like Amazon's coming to literally deliver a 1 foot USB A to Lightning power cord that I
Yeah.
need to just tidy up my desk. Um, and and my wife and my father, they shop for something to do. I like to spend my time doing exactly what I want to do. When I mow my lawn, it's because I want to be
Mhm.
outside. I want to do something that like if when I but I don't, so what's the point I'm making? So AI is just going to and I don't know if this is going to be insulting or not, but AI is going to just free up our time to more time can be spent doing exactly what we want to do. And the people who may be harmed from that are the people who are not clever enough to know what they want to do. You ever talk to a young person or somebody who's like, "What do you want to do?" And with your life, and you're like, "I don't know what I want to do." You know what I mean?
Right.
So maybe those people are going to have a hell of an awakening where it's like, "Hey, you don't need to do this to feed yourself or keep yourself warm or keep yourself uh, homed." Like, you go ahead, do what you want. Go explore new ideas and things and activities and sciences or whatever. Maybe those people are going to have a rude awakening where they just not that clever to, I don't know.
Yeah, those people I think are going to struggle in any environment. I don't think it's whether an AI or whether it was 200 years ago,
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think that I think that's the basis of what any technology wants you to do, right? What percentage of your day are you spending doing things you want to do? And then any sort of monetary gains or productivity gains are about buying back that time. Some people want to use their excess resources to hire somebody to mow their lawn because they don't enjoy that task. Some people want to buy time to go shopping if that's what they enjoy. There's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
That's your somebody else's version of mowing the lawn. So I think that's people need to figure out what they want to do with their time and how do they use the technology to buy their time back.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
maybe they
My
can
wife
do their
tells,
job, their 40-hour a week job. Maybe they can do it in 20, but maybe they don't want to because they don't know what else to do with their 20. Maybe they don't like their family. Maybe they don't like, being home or whatever. So
my wife
all
tells
sorts
me
of
this story
deep
when
discussions.
we first started dating, me and my wife, we would talk about cultural differences. She's from Mexico, Monterrey,
Mm.
and and she tells me this story about how the guys who sell oranges in between stoplights.
Hmm.
Like everybody pulls up to the stoplight, and then for 10 seconds you have an opportunity to sell water or clean a
Sure.
window or something. So she there was a guy selling oranges, and he had a bag of oranges, and my wife was on her way to her parents' house. They were having a cookout or a party or something, and she just wanted the bag of oranges. So guy walks over to her and says, "Hey, can I sell you an orange?" And she's like, "Yeah, how much for the whole bag?" And he was like dumbfounded he's like, "What do you mean?" She's like, "No, I want the whole bag." Like, no, he's like, "It's, I don't know what their money is. It was like, 10 cents an orange or something." He's like, "How many oranges do you want?" And she's like, "No, I'll just take the whole bag. How much for the bag?" He's like, "I can't sell you the bag."
Mm.
And she's like, "What?" He's, "Yeah, I can't sell you the bag. Why?" And she's like, "And why not?" He's like, "Well, if I sell you the bag, like I won't have any oranges to sell."
Right. I know. Yeah. That is an issue. And it happens all the time, actually. So probably another bad analogy, but like when we're sometimes talking to bigger corporations and talking to HR people, we're like, yeah, this is, doing this new 401k process or whatever. It's going to streamline your operations, and you're normally spending an hour a week on payroll. We're gonna free up 50 hours a year. And then they're like, I don't really want to go through with that because they're nervous that their job will be gone or a significant portion of their job. I mean, we had this one company that had multiple locations, and all she ever used to complain about was spending 4 hours a week or maybe every 2 weeks on payroll, pulling in all the different whatever. We kept giving her solutions to fix that, and she had no interest. She just wanted, that was her job, to do the work and complain.
Yep. I've seen that.
There's a lot of that in the system.
I've seen that a lot. The last topic about AI I wanted to talk about, if I don't know how you want to wind down, or you want to go for another 10
Well,
minutes.
yeah, if you got another couple news items or something you want to talk about.
Well, I mean, the other thing that fascinates me with AI, and I think this is the science fiction fears that I think people right now, like you see in the headlines with AI, is like, how is it going to take our jobs, and is it going to destroy the human race, right?
Mhm.
Um, and I went on a really kind of interesting thought journey about this, and I just wanted to see kind of what you were thinking about it. The way that I think about it is, and I wish I was clever enough to come up with the idea that they say that humans are the biological bootloader for artificial intelligence. And most non-technical people might not immediately understand what that means, but like if you have a computer, and you have like operating system like a Mac OS or Windows or iOS, that's your operating system. That operating system actually doesn't start the computer. You actually have like a chip on your computer called a BIOS that kind of is very basic functioning, and it turns on all of the hardware before it passes the function to the operating system, which is the software that lives in RAM and stuff like that. So the BIOS is called the bootloader. It's the dumb thing or the crude thing that boots up the advanced thing, which is your operating system and the internet on top of that and stuff. So, I don't know who coined the term. Certainly heard Elon Musk say it and others. I don't know if Sam Altman said it, and I think Lex and Sam may have mentioned it. But there's this idea that humans are the biological bootloader for artificial intelligence. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I think that makes sense, and I think the long term concern is that the BIOS is such a insignificant piece of what the computer does. Is that when does it not need that part? I
And
guess
it
is the
won't need
kind
it.
of the
And that's the thing. Like, and that's when you let yourself go down. And that's what I did. I went down this thought project, and it's like, okay, well, if AI is derived from us, we're almost like the DNA.
Mhm.
And by the way, we come from DNA. So DNA is the bootloader for humans and animals, right? So you can
Sure.
see how like it was like material science first, and then DNA formed, and they don't yet know how DNA came from chemical science and physical science, but it did somehow, unless God put it there, or we won't go down that road. But then you've got the chemical science, physical science was the bootloader for DNA. DNA was a bootloader for advanced multicellular creatures like
Mhm.
humans, and then humans are now the bootloader for artificial intelligence. And we're all made of the thing that came before us from that bootloading kind
Mhm.
of so if we're the bootloader or the DNA for artificial intelligence, you can in essence say we are the artificial intelligence, right? So humans are, by the way, if you've ever contributed to anything on the internet, congratulations, your DNA is now in the artificial intelligence. If you've made a post on Facebook, if you've published anything on a website, that's what is making up the artificial intelligence, right?
Right.
So you are now a part of that DNA. So then you go, like, if you just decouple the emotion and the awfulness of not being needed or loved or relevant, right, to a successor, and you just go like, okay, well, for the continuation of humans and this whole boulder that's rolling, and if we are the biological bootloader of AI, now humans are completely unconstrained now from all the biological constraints, right? And then you
Mhm.
start thinking, well, how? Because for the last 200 years, we've all been like, well, how we fantasize about interstellar travel, for example, right? Well, you see like a movie like Passengers or something, you're like, well, interstellar travel, the only way that we can travel from one galaxy or one planet to another planet is either a really fast engine, magic, like folding time, space time, which I don't think is possible,
Yeah.
um, or you have multi-generational travel. You create a ship or a vessel or an ark that you is generation one launches, and then you have however many generations will live on this vessel until you get to your destination, right? You ever thought
Mhm.
about that?
Sure. Yeah.
So now, if humans are AI or the successor to whatever you want to call it, life, or if life is science and logic, whatever, you've got this entity or being, and it's sentient, it can think, it know, that's the next step, that this thing is going to be like, oh, I know I'm here, right? That's what AI is going to be.
Mhm.
Then you go like, well, now that's how interstellar travel is going to happen, because if you're not bound by the biology of time, the AI would just point itself at the next planet and just literally not care how long it takes.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And there's always that sort of next level science of, is there the ability to transfer memories or
Well,
emotions or from
it's almost
generation
certainly
to generation?
a thing that's going to happen, right? I mean,
Mhm.
and you scrape enough of my Facebook and you add some AI to it, and you could probably, I mean, they're already reproducing that.
Oh yeah, that's the easy part, learning the personalities, and Lord knows there's enough video content from us. I mean, geez, we've got 50 or 60 hours out there already just on this
Completely.
alone. They could figure us out pretty
Our
easily.
mannerisms, our speech, our thought,
Yeah,
a lot of our thoughts. So that's almost a certainty, right?
sure. But
So,
what ends up being that connection or that extension, has it like the Neuralink stuff that they're working on, or what lets you actually experience it or go there,
well, that's
when
the thing. Like, it's like a bee in a beehive. Like, the organism is the whole. It's not the individual.
mm,
So we're uploading into the AI. You and I, we're not going to be needed. We're our experience is not relevant. And if you that's what I'm saying. Like, if you can kind of decouple from that emotion, that it's like if you ever watch a movie of like somebody cloned himself, like Arnold Schwarzenegger did a clone, and like now he's got like there's two versions of him, but only one wife, and like one of them's got to go away. You know what I mean? But like
right.
they both have the memories of their existence. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's like it's really heartbreaking. But if you really like, I feel like that's what AI is, where we are we're like replicating our existence into this other being, and then if or I think the Prestige with Hugh Jackman or something, where he was like he was a magician and he figured out how to clone himself, but like
Mhm.
he never knew which one was going to end up in the. Did you see that?
No.
Oh God, you got to see that. It's really dark. He cloned himself in order to do this magic trick called the Prestige, and it wasn't magic. He was cloning himself. So that's how he was able to go across the stage instantaneously, because it was he created. But the clone was always dropped off of a hatchway door into a fishbowl, and he was killing his he was killing
Nice.
his clone. It's dark. It's really dark. But to go back to like the interstellar travel thing, and this is kind of interesting because it's like if we are the bootloader for AI, and then we can send a sentient being that we created or we won't even send it. It'll probably do it. Its ambition will probably exist unto itself.
Mhm.
It's like, oh, I'll just go into a low power state or not, because boredom is not a thing that maybe a robot would experience. You know what I mean?
Right, but the energy, there still might be energy limitations in place before. I don't know if the energy, the propulsion mechanism, if that accelerates faster than the AI stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, but then you go into a low power state. You have a
Mhm.
battery that stores the power. They've got these things called solar winds out there or you do an ion thruster that doesn't
Mhm.
have to move very fast. So because you're not limited to the time of biology, you can accelerate a craft very fast over millions of years. And um, I mean, it's really out there thinking, but for me, it doesn't feel very out there. It's like that's all that is needed is AI, general AI to be formed, and then you put it in some form factor like a bipedal robot that Boston Dynamics is working on, and now it becomes the successor organism to from biology.
Yeah, right. I get all that. I'm still trying to figure out. So if you look at it from like a living, you know, through eternity, right? At one point we leave this physical form because it's not very efficient, right? It's
It's
all that stuff.
vulnerable. It's hampered by
Mhm.
basically everything.
Right, right. It's susceptible to disease and wear and tear and all that sort of stuff. But so what is the exit mechanism to exit this physical form when it's done producing? And maybe it's sort of a slow, where you get to a certain age, just people are replacing hips and arms and whatever. Maybe it is as simple as just a brain transplant. Maybe you will have to transfer a physical piece just to until we figure out what that connection is. I mean, you can't plug in a USB to one ear and then get it into a AI form to do a complete transfer.
But
But
that's the dark thing I think is very likely, is that, again, we most people, as you described, want to hold on to the experience that they are having.
mhm,
Nobody wants to be the clone that doesn't get to go forward.
right, right.
But I think that's what's I think that's what's going to happen in what we call science fiction today. I think very soon, in a very frightening. I mean, GPT-4 was created in August. Like, literally, what are they working on right now? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
right.
talk about like the lab leak theory. Like, if this thing gets, whether they don't want it to get out or it does get out or whatever,
Mhm,
um, you know, it's like the form factors. I mean, Dynamics is already creating bipedal robots that can walk and whatever. So the usefulness of those robots are no longer really a limitation of the form factor. It's just a software limitation. And if AI is the software, which looks like we're on the precipice of that coming out, you put that software in all of these form factors, especially a humanoid bipedal thing that can, you know, opposable thumb, right? How long did we champion the opposable? We're the best because of the opposable thumb. You know what I mean?
right.
But now AI is like, or, oh, we're the best because we just don't die.
Yeah, exactly. Right. You think about, there must be a certain age where there's a crossover now. So you think about, we're too old because our early life wasn't, online, but your kids, you could, what's known out there, between all the data that's out there, you could reconstruct basically their whole life, where they were physically at all times, right? There's enough pictures and video to recreate what they've looked like their whole time. Um, from a there, there's certainly audio, and there's all that sort of stuff. So you could almost, I don't know, maybe it's an 8-year-old, maybe it's a 12-year-old or whatever, but there's, for enough people, you could pretty much build that whole thing and use AI to fill in the gaps. So you could rebuild that person on the other side with
So, like,
those
you're
same
you're
memories.
describing like a potential population of artificial beings, artificial intelligent beings.
Yeah, I mean, because you'll eventually have enough information and on data people. And like I said, there's a certain age where it's already out there. You
So
could,
now, so I thought about that. Now go
yeah.
to the next level and say, okay, well, you're a sentient being, you're the artificial intelligence. Then you start thinking of like usefulness. I mean, the way the universe works is out of usefulness and the imperativeness of like survivability, right? And
Mhm,
you're like, okay, well, I can reproduce. This is the other thing that I forgot who was talking about. It was a Sam Altman or whatever, but like the like there's speculation that it's either going to be really good or really bad when the day that the AI can reproduce itself from a physicality standpoint. Basically, machines building machines, right? And like I get the fear behind that, but what I think is more likely that's going to happen is, even if all of our information about us is uploaded into the I think that's when the singularity occurs, where like the AI goes like, well, why would I make more of myself? I mean, sure, you make more of yourself to like build maybe the rocket ship faster or the things, but then I think there's like I think it's almost like this flywheel that spins before it explodes, and then it's
mhm.
like nothing, because like it could create millions of copies of itself to dominate whatever. Um, but then like if you just think past, then what? If you keep going, then what? Then what? Then what? Which the robot will be able to do instantaneously. It's got to come to the conclusion that like there's no point.
Right. And I think there'll have to be a point where machines will know that they can't survive without us. They're obviously not there yet. They still need a physical form to power them. They still need a physical form to create the physical storage space, until they figure out how to completely can keep minimizing themselves to the point where they don't need, maybe they get to the point where they're like, all right, there's enough solar panels around to, um,
But they wouldn't they get to the point where they would work that they would just keep going, and then
mhm,
what? Even before they're like, okay, well, we've got we can control the solar factory for power. We can control Boston Dynamics robot factory to create we can control these. Then what? Then
mhm,
what? Then what? Like, that's just a simple like tenfold question tree, right?
Yeah, right.
Okay, then we take over and subjugate the humans as if, and that's the funny thing, like that's the ego of humanity, is like as if we would matter,
Right,
like
right.
if you ever watched the Marvel movies, I think it was like Sam Jackson says to Loki, our quarrel isn't with you, and then Loki goes, does the ant have a quarrel with the boot? You know what I mean? And it's like the robot, the sentient being would clearly be like, okay, well, if I needed to make the humans inconsequential, just make a 30-foot version of myself, or or 130-foot versions of myself. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then like the ant has no quarrel with the boot. But then what? Okay, now that you are the master of Earth, then what do you do? Like certainly
Right.
the AI is not going to just like stay 6 to 7 foot versions of bipedal form factor to just like go nana nana boo boo to the human race. I don't see,
Right.
I don't
Right.
see
If
that
you get
happening.
to, to relate it back to us, if you get to immortality and infinite wealth, what
Then
else is
what?
really next? Right.
Then what? And that's what the AI I think will achieve is, and it'll be able to do that. It's like that flywheel that spins so fast, it's at critical mass and then explodes. Like
Mhm.
is like you see it spinning up, and then all of a sudden like and then it explodes.
Yeah.
And I think that somehow, and I don't know what the outcome is at the end of that line is, where the AI goes like, because I definitely don't think the AI is going to go full Terminator on us. Because like why? Who
Right.
cares? It won't need us to live. It won't need us to reproduce. It won't need us to do anything. So it's like boot and ant. Like the boot doesn't have a quarrel. That's what he said. Does a boot have a quarrel with the ant? Like
Mhm.
you don't think about it. The things
Yeah.
that we walk on around us, we don't think about.
Right. Unless you think that there's an in-between spot where they still need us, and because they need us, they know that if we're not here, if they get to a point where they're not completely all knowing, where they can't go down that 10 question circle, but they know that we have the ability to press the red button and turn them off or something, and they say, well, our future depends on not having them.
What is more, isn't it more likely, I mean, they could physically dominate us faster, right? Because we're flesh and bone, age,
Mhm.
radiation. They can talk about like just nuke the whole planet and just you can wipe out human existence, and
Right.
the robots won't be susceptible to that. So they can, I don't think that we will lord over them physically.
Right.
I don't think we will lord over them intellectually, because once the AI amasses the totality of our knowledge base, it can access that in perpetuity instantaneously. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So like this, they will have all the smartest people's minds instantaneously, right? So
Right.
they won't lord over us intellectually. What if they find they need us for new ideas or new experiences? So then all of a sudden we become needed for the human experience unto itself. You
Yeah,
know,
that's right. Yeah, and I think the we'll probably end it there on nuclear war, but like we've had the ability to end all mankind for, you know, 60 years or whatever. We've had the ability to do that, and it still hasn't been abused. So even on a human level, we've understand the idea of mutual destruction, and there's 5 or 6 people in the world who could press a button right now and probably end humanity, right? Or a significant portion of it, and that's not happened. So maybe the AI at least picks up on that aspect of it, so it's not a
I think
permanent.
if the AI keeps going, and then what? Okay, it'll find that it'll do nothing in the most ironic, surprising kind of way.
Hmm.
Like it'll just, sure, we can turn into intergalactic travel. We can kill all of you. We could destroy the planet. We can keep the planet. We can kill all living organisms. And then what?
But maybe there's a point in time where they become all knowing of everything thing earthly in the immediate universe. But if the universe is infinite and always expanding at a rate that's faster than the AI can learn it, they may feel that there's a something else they have to get to, or something else they have to
Hmm.
learn.
Hmm.
All right. We'll wrap it up on that. Who knows?
We record every Tuesday morning.
Maybe if we're around next week.
If we're around, we're Finance and Technology Insights. My name is Eric Buhrendorf. I'm the CEO of EVERNET Consulting. We're a national IT and MSP managed service provider. You can find me at evernetco.com, schedule a discovery call, or follow us on social. We're at EVERNETCO. I'm joined every week by my esteemed colleague, Brian Williams.
We are Northshire Consulting, Connecticut-based independent investment advisory firm. If you happen to be listening all this time and skip to the end, congratulations.
Congratulations.
And in a couple of days, if you've got 5 or more employees, you have to have a retirement plan. So remember that much. So northshireconsulting.com. Social media is usually 401k and beyond. And that's it. See you next
All
week.
right, we'll see you next week.